Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. My name is Katie Walters, and I am the Executive Director of Leadership Kitsap. And on behalf of our Board of Directors, it's my privilege to welcome you to LIFT, Kitsap Women's Leadership Network. So if you are new to LIFT, we are a community leadership development program hosted by Leadership Kitsap. And we hold quarterly virtual lunchtime gatherings such as this, as well as host a growing Facebook group. So many of you may be members of our Facebook group. If not, there's a link to connect to that when you're back on the floor. And what we really do is seek to address issues that are important to our community's women leaders, such as today's topic of imposter syndrome. So we offer this place for you to come together, connect, learn, communicate, and share our common experience. We chose the name LIFT based on Melinda Gates' quote, "When you lift up women, you lift up everybody, families, communities, entire countries." We want to thank our Leadership Kitsap executive sponsors, Kitsap Community Foundation, Muckleshoot Indian Tribe, the Point Casino and Hotel, and Port Madison Enterprise. And thank you especially to LIFT's virtual platform sponsor, Watson Furniture Group. So we're on Remo today. So it's a networking webinar platform, and we think it offers you a fun and engaging experience. So a little bit more like being in person and the opportunity to connect and feel inspired. So let me share just a brief overview with you of Remo. So first, congratulations for successfully signing on. And if you'd like to update your profile with a photo and additional information to link to your Facebook or LinkedIn profile, just click on the circle in the upper right-hand part of your screen. And then while we're in presentation mode, like we are right now, your camera and mic will be off. You'll get to hear from our panelists in just a moment. And you can connect with them using the chat and participants tab, so you can see who's here. And we'll be using the Q&A tab as well, so you can submit your questions and upvote questions that you'd like to see answered. And you can also react to what is being said by the emojis down below. So you can give her a thumbs up or a wave, and that will show up in the little dots below. And if you have any tech questions, please use the Need Help button in the bottom left corner of your screen for FAQs or to be connected directly to Remo for help. There's also a team of us on today, so if you have any questions, you can also put them in chat so we can check that way and we can connect with you that way. But we realize that, it can be frustrating to try out some new tech, but I think we're all really familiar with that this year. So it can be a fun time to learn something new too. But what we've really found is most issues can be resolved by just refreshing your screen. So if you have any issues and you're not seeing something, just refresh your screen and that should pop you back in. And we'll return to the floor following our panel discussion, so you'll have some more networking time as well, and just double click between tables if you want to move around. So today's topic of imposter syndrome, I just want to let you know it was suggested in our social media outreach campaign when we asked what topics you'd like us to cover. So thank you for responding. And so this was one of the ones that came up. So a little bit about imposter syndrome, that according to the American Psychological Association, 7 out of 10 people experience imposter syndrome, and disproportionately more are women. So despite their actual achievements, some successful people believe that their abilities have been overestimated and that they will eventually be unmasked as imposters. So today, to lead our panel discussion and to learn a little bit more about this important topic, especially this topic to women, and what to do when this shows up in yourself and in those that you lead, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Leadership Kitsap board member and the executive director of St. Michael Medical Center Foundation, Sarah Chamberlin. So Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everybody. I am honored to lead this panel discussion today with some fine women from our very own community. And I'm really looking forward to learning from the 3 panelists that we have today. But first, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the term imposter syndrome. Pardon me. It was coined by 2 American psychologists, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, in 1978. So this is an old term. It goes decades back. but it's really starting to come to light in modern day. And the term is used to designate an internal experience of intellectual phoniness, which appears to be particularly prevalent in and intense among a select sample of high-achieving women. These women reported generalized anxiety, lack of self-confidence, depression, and frustration related to the inability to meet self-imposed standards of achievement. So in the clinical experience, they found the phenomenon occurred in much less frequency in men than it occurred in women. But when it did, it was with much less intensity. So we don't want to take away that men still have these feelings and emotions. It just tends to be less intense for men. So women tend to judge their performance as worse than they objectively are, while they judge men as their own is better. So you can see why these feelings of insecurity or feeling of self-doubt may hold some women back. And for example, you might have heard the statistic that men are confident in their ability to apply for jobs when they only meet maybe 60% of the qualifications, but women usually don't really apply unless they meet 100% of those qualifications. So there's a big difference between men and women, even with seeking new roles and professions. So even the most successful women leaders have been unsure of themselves. Excuse me. And we're hoping that today's conversation will help shrink the gender confidence gap and drive and give you strategies for channeling healthy self-doubt into positive motivation. And so now I don't want to hold you guys any longer. I want to introduce our three panelists. So with us today, we have Chris Rieland, and Chris is the current president and CEO of Pacific Northwest Title with over 3 decades of experience in title and escrow. Her background also includes mortgage lender, real estate investing, and commercial property management. Chris was a founding member of Pacific Northwest Title in Seattle in 1983 and founded Pacific Northwest Title of Kitsap in 1990, growing the local company to a dominant title and escrow company on the peninsula. She is active in the community and has held many civic leadership roles, including Rotary Club president, past chair and board member of the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, and past board member of the Harrison Medical Center. She is active in Excel, Puget Sound, and enjoys membership in many real estate trade associations. We also have joining us today Lieutenant Jeannie Elton. Jeannie started her career with the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office Jail as a corrections officer in 2000, promoted to sergeant in 2006, and then to lieutenant in 2008. Jeannie graduated from the inaugural National Jail Leadership Command Academy in 2009, as well as the inaugural National Jail Executive Development Program in 2017. She has been published in the American Jail Association magazine and has instructed at the American Jail Association National Conference in Louisville, Kentucky. Jeannie earned the American Jail Association designation of Certified Jail Manager in 2021. Jeannie graduated from Leadership Kitsap in 2010 and was a 20 under 40 honoree in 2014 and a YWCA Women of Achievement honoree for public service in 2016. Jeannie is married with 3 children. In her free time, she enjoys spending time with her family, camping, traveling, and volunteering in her community. And last but certainly not least, we have Alexis Foster joining us today. And Alexis began her legal career as in-house counsel with a local software development company. Desiring to make a greater impact in the community, in 2006, Alexis began her career as a public servant as a deputy prosecuting attorney with the Kitsap County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. Alexis practiced as a trial attorney in several of the office's criminal divisions. After 10 years with the prosecutor's office, in early 2016, Alexis was appointed to her current position with the city of Poulsbo. As risk manager, Alexis's role is to assist in protecting the assets and resources of the city of Poulsbo, collaborating with staff to minimize the probability, occurrence, and impact of losses to the city. She's also the city prosecutor, and she is the legal advisor to the city on all criminal, infraction, and crime-related property matters, including representing the City of Poulsbo Municipal Kitsap County District, and Superior Courts, and all property-related asset matters. Alexis is a proud wife of a federal law enforcement officer and mother of 2 wonderful children. So thank you, Chris, Jeannie, and Alexis for joining us today to share your stories. And so we have a couple of questions that we're going to be asking our panelists, and we'll kind of go one by one, and then we can have a little dialogue back and forth. So the first question that I want to pose today to each of you is, have you ever experienced a sense of imposter syndrome in your professional career? And if so, what were the circumstances and how did you navigate through those feelings? Chris, would you like to start first?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I think I mentioned to Sarah, the first feeling of imposter syndrome is when I was asked to be on this panel. So with that, I'll continue on. So I can remember getting a box of business cards when I first opened up this business that said president and CEO. And I think there's this overwhelming feeling of, I have no idea what I'm doing and how I even got here. And so I think it kind of started through that, and then same feelings of just running a business, certainly through the recession in the real estate industry, and even running one through the pandemic. And so just prior to the recession, I think the biggest thing that impacted me, where I felt most out of my comfort zone, or that sinking feeling of I'm probably shouldn't be where I am, was in the construction of the building that we're in right now. I had mortgaged my house before, but never gone out and got a multi-million-dollar loan to build a commercial office building. And so it was something that I was cutting my teeth on, and blindly you go in with ambition and everything else. And then there's just these points that you get to that is just fear sets in of, oh my goodness. I mean, the fear of the lender calling saying, we need you to put up some more money. And I'd already sold my children and mortgaged my house, and the well had run dry. And I went, I am so far out of my league. And so I guess that was the biggest, one of the biggest things that, that I can remember that had an impact of just that sinking, fearful feeling.
So how did you navigate through those? How did you talk yourself out of that? Did it just happen naturally, or did you have to have pep talks with yourself?
It didn't happen naturally. I mean, the benefit that we have of being in this community is that it's such relationship based. And so, I think actually just sort of pulling out the stops and becoming really, really honest. And I had talked to somebody that was just near and dear to me, and just kind of laid it out there to go, oh my God, the bank wants more money, and what am I going to do? And I guess putting everything aside and just telling the honest story, and bless his heart, he said, well, just call the bank back and tell them that's not working for you. And it's like, well, that hadn't occurred to me. Okay, I did that, and I knew enough to not say another word. And they said, okay, let's see what we can do. They called me back about 10 minutes later going, okay, we'll go to closing. And I just sat there like a deer in the headlights. And I think, the moral of that story was, for me, to not just be honest. At that point, I'd kind of bet the farm that, it really was close to slipping away and saying, well, I really don't know what to do at this point. So I think, if there's advice or how I navigated to it, looking in the rearview mirror was, certainly just stepping outside of yourself and what other circumstance you're in, and just asking for help, telling people what the story is. And, this person had been through things like that before, and connect into people that can possibly help you. But, I suppose if I got ego or fear or anything else that got in the way, I just wouldn't have had that conversation, and probably wouldn't have been, in this building today. So,
right.
Yeah.
I think that's likely a theme that we're probably going to hear, not only during this panel discussion, but when we all go back to the floor and have conversations amongst ourselves. That for me, and in my past roles, that asking for help when I feel that way, no one really wants to admit it. And I think we talked about this yesterday, was we don't want to admit to ourselves out loud, to verbalize it, that we're having these feelings. The getting to that point of saying it out loud is scary enough that it might actually be a real feeling, and admitting that it's a really real feeling, when on the outside you probably look like you have it all together, but on the inside you're terrified. So verbalizing it can be terrifying. But then for you, getting that just so easy, right? Well, just be an open book, just say what you're feeling.
Right.
And it all worked out. So we'll probably notice that as a theme. But Jeannie, do you want to go ahead next and talk about your situations?
Sure. I think that this has been a reoccurring thing for me over the course of my career. And, there are definitely still times where in meetings or in certain high pressure events, I can definitely say that I have some of these thoughts. But I think the most resounding example for myself was back in 2008, I was promoted to operations lieutenant of the jail. And the circumstances were dynamic in that the position that was created was a brand new position, and nobody really there was no roadmap, there was no rule book, there was no guidance, there was nobody who had ever done this job before. And so I was left to really my own devices to create the position and fit in and make myself a contributing member to the agency. While at the same time, my supervision team, for all the great that they were, none of them had ever worked in the jail. And so as helpful as they were to me, with niceties and support in that way, they didn't have the time. One, they didn't have the time to help me in some of these regards, and they didn't have some of the knowledge set that it took to work this position. And so, when I have been preparing to talk with all of you, I really sat for a while and thought, what did this look like for me? What happened during these times where I was really, somewhat internally beside myself? And for me, it was really about fear. I was afraid to make the wrong decisions. I was afraid I was afraid that I wasn't going to prove myself to my organization or to even myself. I felt that internally, at times I felt like a fraud. I felt like I was, faking it and not making it. Although other people may have not seen that in me. I think also there were definitely times where external things throughout my life played a part in this. I think that I was raised in an era where, girls kind of defer to other people. You're taught to, share, give, have manners, be ladylike, don't be aggressive, all of these types of things. I was trained to be a certain way, and it at times I think made it harder for me in my profession. Additionally, I'm trying to be honest here. I'm here to speak candidly. There were a couple excruciating moments in my career where externally maybe some things were said about me or to me that really impacted me in a way that led to concerns of being an imposter. And so, all in all, it has been a road, and it's been something, that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, it is something, isn't it? Very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing that and for being candid with us. Yeah. Alexis, how about you?
Like Jeannie, I think it's something that occurs regularly throughout my career. It's never ending. I don't think it'll ever stop. But one of the earliest memories of actually recognizing it was I had graduated law school. I had moved here to Seattle. I did not have a job yet. Wasn't sure where I was going to get a job, but I was going to do something. And during law school, I wanted to be in-house counsel. I knew that while I was in law school, that was my goal. And I was told that's not going to ever happen. You're not going to come out of law school and get an in-house counsel job. And you're definitely not going to do it as a Black woman. And usually when somebody says that to me, that just increases my motivation to prove them wrong. And of course, I landed my first job and I was in-house counsel at a tech company. At the time, the CFO was also the chief legal officer. And when I got hired, he said, "Great, I'm so glad we've got you. Now I can go fly my planes, drive my Ferrari, go have a good time, and I don't have to be here, and you can handle everything." And it was just me. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. It all of a sudden, everything that I learned, everything that I'd done, it felt like it all went out the window. And here I am now leading this company into our second venture capital financing round of several $1,000,000. I'm also helping to set up international offices in Russia and in China. And I'm like, I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this. I don't think I have the capability. I don't know what to do. And luckily, I had built a really good support system. I come from a family of very strong women who have always encouraged me and always said, "You can do anything you put your mind to, and we know you can. So just do it." But I also had some very good friends who were men who don't necessarily have to fight that same battle and have some of that confidence, and we're willing to share that, sort of like Chris talked about. And I called them up and said, "I don't think I can do this. I think I'm going to get fired. I'm going to screw this up. This is millions of dollars. This is terrible. I think I should just quit." And my best friend said, "You're not quitting. You're going to work through this. You've got it. Stop, breathe, and just take yourself back to where you were before you had this job. You have the ability, the intelligence, and the capability to do it." And when we would go have meetings with various folks, usually I was the only woman, and I was usually the only person of color, which made it even more difficult. And I often internalized that. And I just had to keep remembering what my circle kept telling me. I was also very cheesy, I'm going to be honest. I had inspirational quotes that I would type up and print out and put all over my apartment at that time. I had them on the refrigerator, I had them on the bathroom mirror, I had them on the door when I went out the house. And it was just became a practice of repeating these things to myself, to remind myself at every stage before I went out the door that I was more than capable, I was more than competent, and I could do it.
Right. So it seems like there's also a trend in confidence, right? We start to go through these feelings and emotions that is imposter syndrome, and that really puts a dent in our confidence. And Alexis, just like you and Chris both mentioned, reaching out to men. I think that's very interesting that both of you have situations where you reached out to men to help you work through that confidence deficit, really, and help build you back up. And Jeannie, I'm sure you had that too, talking with many of your coworkers over the years. And going back to, we have to voice it. We have to have these conversations and dialogues with people to talk ourselves out of it, really, right? So great. Thank you very much, Alexis, for that. Let's move on to our second question. And this is more as a woman leader. How have you helped your staff or any of your colleagues get through their feelings of imposter syndrome? What words of encouragement do you have for the women here today that might be experiencing some of the same characteristics of imposter syndrome? And we talked a little bit about it today, like Alexis just mentioned, with her inspirational quotes. And I know I do that a lot. I keep a wisdom and inspiration Pinterest board. And when I'm having those feelings, I go back and I read those to boost myself up. Try to do it before bed so I get a good night's sleep. But so that would be my little piece of advice: is always try to go to bed without having those feelings of really that low self-confidence and the feelings that you're failing. That's what always keeps me up at night. So that would be my recommendation to people. But Chris, why don't you go ahead and start? And do you have any experiences to share about maybe not even just staff and colleagues, but friends that have come to you with these feelings, and how have you helped them work through that?
Yeah, thanks. Well, yeah, I can really focus on staff. We're 92% women in our shop. And yeah, I see the results of that for, women are just, it seems like we're natural born supporters.
Sure.
We're wives and moms and caretakers and, and that just extends into the workplace. I mean, we're just caring for everybody else and oftentimes at our own expense. So, how can I, help them? Mostly we talk a lot about it. We observe behavior. And when we see things, we talk a lot about how do we handle that if somebody's, going off the rails or, because again, it's like a symptom of what's happening on the inside.
Yeah.
So we've tried to certainly create a safe workplace to have some of those really critical conversations. And then again, we just test ourselves on, and from what place? From a place of compassion that we don't necessarily know everything that's going on the inside. And, I mean, it goes back to all of us, right? I still, listening to everybody else's stories, it's like, yes, I was first woman president in my role. And we go to these meetings and all the spouses, including mine, would go to the tea party and I'd be on the golf range. I mean, it was like he was the only guy at the tea party. And so you get all these messages that, okay, well, that's not right. And even role models, what are things supposed to look like? So yeah, I look at the women that we have and start to, ask those critical questions. Like, what is it that keeps you from asking for help? And, as their leader, that's a really pointed question. And sometimes you just see these absolute breakdowns of, well, it would mean failure, or I would be judged, or, something like that. And just, what would it mean to take care of yourself? And it's like the dragon to be slayed is guilt. It's like, where does that come from? If you're going to go take care of yourself, take an hour to leave and go give yourself some self-care. It's not self-care if you're dragging guilt along with you. So I think, forums like this in our workplace, just absolutely throwing all these discussions on the table and trying to wrestle with them, because you just can't do it on your own. I see the effects of it for people that are just limiting themselves because of what they believe. So, I think if we can just call it like it is, it's like imposter syndrome. I mentioned around the office and people go, oh yeah, God, yep, that's me. And I went, seriously? Okay, there's our next topic too.
Yeah. Well, great. That's awesome. That is carrying over. So you guys are probably going to have a little staff workshop about having these types of conversations with your staff too.
Sure.
That's amazing. Great recommendation right there. Jeannie, why don't you go ahead next?
Yeah, I think the advice that I've given my core group of friends or, coworkers is the same thing I try to do for myself in these instances. I am a big advocate of doing things to ground yourself before you run into situations where that might happen to you, be it exercising before the meeting or the events or before work. I love the quote thing. I have a couple of really funny ones that I constantly remind myself of. I'm also a big advocate of getting it out. If I'm running into a situation where I know it's going to be difficult, for me, in one way or another, I like to play loud music before I get there and, maybe shout it out, shriek it out, whatever. Another thing is I'm really into shifting the focus of your thoughts. Negative thoughts can creep into my head, and usually the one thing I tell myself and remind my friends is to remember why you're here. Why was I picked for the job? I was picked for the job because of this. And so let's shift away from the negative into the positive. Remind yourself that you're worthy. I love to tell people, particularly the females that I have relationships with, you're at the table for a reason. Lean into it, sit up at it, and raise your hand. That's kind of my mantra. Make sure that you're contributing and that everyone knows you're there. And I think that those are my biggest takeaways. Also, I'm really into reading, and so I inspire people to read a couple books that I've read. Look at those TED Talks on imposter syndrome. There's a ton of them. fear, shame, guilt. Brene Brown, she's fantastic. So those are the types of things that I've tried to do with people, and also congratulate people on their successes. Whatever the success was, congratulate them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, continue to build up. Great recommendations. Thank you very much. How about you, Alexis?
So I think the biggest thing that I recommend is having a circle of positive people, having that supportive circle. That has gotten me through everything that I've gone through in my career. And I've got different circles. I've got my group of women that I rely on heavily. But I also have a group of men, old lawyers who have really helped me, really supported me, and sometimes hearing them just say, "You've got this," has done wonders. Yeah. People that I respect and that I've thought that I've looked an absolute fool before, who've come to me and said, "Really? You thought that? Yeah, you were the brightest thing we saw," has helped. So just making sure you surround yourself with positive people who are there to support you is key. The other thing that I make sure to do with my staff, I have a legal assistant, a paralegal who is a woman, is that I involve her in my decision making. I let her know that just because I've got a law degree doesn't necessarily mean I'm any smarter than she is. And sometimes I want to hear what she thinks and get her opinion. And her opinion might be better than what I thought. She may have an answer I don't have. And I want her to feel empowered that way, and empowered to speak up and to make decisions, because she is just as capable to do that. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, the older I get, the more blunt I've become. And so, like Jeannie said, not necessarily holding it in. I've become a lot more outspoken. I went through a phase where I was outspoken as a kid. I got older, quieted down a bit, didn't want to stir the pot. And now I'm back at this phase of, I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to speak my truth. And if you don't like it, too bad. It is what it is. Because I've seen men do it. Yep. Men do it all the time. So why am I going to hold back and not do it for myself, and encourage the women around me to do the same, because that's extremely important. The inspirational quotes, like I said, I still keep them. I don't have them hanging up around the house because my husband's like, "Can we please take down all the words all over the house?" But I do keep them on my phone. I do keep a journal. I've got a little daughter, a 9-year-old little girl, and so she has them in her room, so that she can feel that same thing from an early age. Because especially as young Black girls and Black women, that imposter syndrome starts very early on, and it can completely derail you from your future. And I wanted to make sure that her and other girls who look like her have something to boost themselves and to remind themselves that they deserve to be in the places that they're in.
Right. Wonderful. Fantastic. Now we want to do some kind of panel Q&A. So first, I'd just like to start with the three of you. Do you guys have any questions for one or the other, as you've heard them tell their stories? And while they're thinking, community out there, if you have any questions that you want to ask specifically that would be good overall for the group, you can put it in the chat, and then I will ask. And we just have about 5 minutes to do a Q&A, and then we're going to go back to the floor. And if you wanted to have discussions with our panelists, they will be out on the floor to help answer any questions that you have. But if you think there's something good for the overall group, go ahead and stick it in the chat, and I'll just take a peek-see here. But Chris, Jeannie, and Alexis, if you guys wanted to ask a question, go ahead. Let me just look really quick to see what we have.
I don't have any questions of the panelists. They're amazing women, and I can't imagine doing those jobs. So
Bravo and a clap.
Yeah, we can't imagine doing this either, Jeannie.
Exactly.
This was great discussion today. Thank you, ladies, so much. We haven't had a question come in, so I think we'll just head to the floor a few minutes early. I don't think anyone will really mind that. So what we want
Sarah,
to do,
we do. We have some questions in the, look at the Q&A tab. We have
okay.
Before we send you back to the floor, we have just a couple.
Okay, yes, I will do that. I see them now. So first one is, why do we tend to dismiss compliments but take criticisms to heart? That's a great question. Anyone want to take a stab at that?
I will.
Okay.
You know, I work in an environment where it's team effort always, you know, where no one's making decisions by themselves in a silo. And, you know, so if everything goes really well, it's a group of people that contributed. However, I am absolutely guilty of when I deserved the credit, eschewing it to other people, maybe even if they didn't deserve it, just to have manners, to be polite, to appear as if, you know, I'm a part of the team, you know, and I don't know why. Well, I do. For me, I think it was in some part the way that I was raised. It's the way that I was educated. It's the way that I participated through my life. And, you know, when I was in high school, I was really into sports and team and all of these things. I think contributed to that psychology for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as women, we're just conditioned to not take compliments, to be humble. If you aren't humble and you take those compliments and you speak about yourself highly, then you are looked at as, you know, a not so nice woman, right? Whereas a man gets all the praises and that he praises himself, and that's great. So I think it's really sort of conditioned into us by society, because I am terrible at taking compliments. Criticisms, I take to heart. It hurts. I try to fix it. But compliments, I'm just like, oh, okay, thanks. And, you know, move on.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Chris, were you going to add something to that?
Yeah, I agree. I see that a lot, and am guilty too of, you know, it seems empty when you just become gracious and say, well, thank you. You know, it's almost like, oh, that conditioning that we have, but I could have done better, or, you know, I had lots of help, and, you know, that deflection instead of just really standing in that really gracious gratitude, you know, of receiving a compliment. I think it's a real tough habit to overcome.
Yeah.
We see it a lot. I think, as women, it was someone else.
Yeah. Deflect.
Yeah.
And what you said, Alexis, is what I was thinking when Jeannie was speaking, is being humble. I mean, it's like the Cinderella fairy tale that we're always supposed to be humble and kind. And instead of owning our greatness, right? So next question, help us differentiate between imposter syndrome and trauma from harmful leadership. Woof. And or from experiences with discrimination. Anyone want to go for this one?
So I think that imposter syndrome and experiences from discrimination as a woman of color go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I think that experiences from discrimination, racial discrimination in particular, in my experience, leads to that imposter syndrome. You're told that you can't do this because you're Black, you're not going to be good as because you're Black, and that's taught to you from a very early age. So fortunately enough, I had a family that said, you're better than, you know, you will do 110% and you will be better than, so don't listen. But it didn't mean that it didn't still creep in.
Yeah.
And so I think it's not as much differentiating, it's one causing the other.
I agree with that. I think this imposter syndrome there's many pieces to it. You know, you can have so many messages again, you know, whether you're a woman of color, whether you're a woman, whether it's a gender issue, whatever it is, there's these messages that you can pick up going, not good enough, or not right, or that's wrong, or something that just continues to inflict doubt. And those can hijack you.
Yeah.
They've said it all. Yeah, they've said it all. So we'll move on. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got one more before we'll head to the floor. Everyone's upvoting questions. Let's see here. So I'll do this one since we talked. Chris mentioned self-care. So how do we find the balance between taking a mental break and feeling like you're unproductive? I know that I've really experienced this since the start of the pandemic with working from home, having my kids being in school. Holy cannoli, that mentally, it was too much for me. In all honesty, it was too much for me. And I'll say I voiced it. I voiced it to my employer and they cared, which was amazing. I voiced it to family and friends and some understood it. Some were going through the same thing. So they understood it. But there had to be a change that was made. And so I really had to say, in order for me to keep doing my job as a wife, a mother, an employee, as a leader, I have to take time for myself. Otherwise, I will fail at everything. And I wasn't willing to do that. I wasn't willing to fail at any one of those things. So I had to make it a priority for myself. And whether it was an extra hour of sleep by skipping a workout, or it was getting up an hour early to make sure I got my workout in, depending on what the day had. For me, that is what really helped me mentally keep it together. But anyone else, feel free to take that. How do you guys find your balance to keep yourself going without feeling additional guilt by taking that mental break?
For me, it's something I struggle with every day. I mean, if I sit down on a Saturday and I'm not, I might watch a television program or might skip a workout or might, not be productive. It's something I battle with in my head, and it makes literally no sense because everyone else in my family is enjoying their day laying around leisurely. For me though, just like you said, Sarah, if I don't take care of myself, I do a terrible job at taking care of all of my other, all the necessities in my life. In the work that I happen to do, it's very high stakes at times. We take care of human beings, and if it doesn't go right, it can't be worse. It can't be a worse day. And I find that I have to leave work and go to the gym or go run, because when I go to my more important job of taking care of my family, I don't do it well if I'm walking out of a critical incident at work and straight into my home. So it is a struggle to make time for myself when I feel like I have so many commitments to everyone else. But, yeah.
I think there's steps. We have something that we play with here, and it's just called permission slip. And so, if I'm speaking to somebody else that I realize is just up against it, it was a gift that was given to me. I'm starting a company. I'm raising young kids. I'm just, having a mental breakdown. And one of my board members said, "What do you need, a permission slip? Like, what is wrong with you?" Of course, very male dominated, they go out and play golf. And it's like, okay, yes, I need a permission slip.
I do.
Right. And so I have no idea why I can't write that slip and give it to myself. But I went, all right, baby steps. I'll help other women. I will say, do you need a permission slip? Okay. We just elected to close the office. And it's like, what are you going to do with your time off? I'm just going to unplug all your computers. You guys need to dial out. Here's your permission slip. And so I figured, well, if I can't do it for myself, we can start to play with it. So hopefully somebody is handing me one at the same time, but it's been effective. And it's like sometimes you need somebody to go do this, just do it.
I love that. And has anyone given you a permission slip to take time?
Yes.
Or has it become easier over time to do it?
Oh my gosh, no. It still isn't easy. It's the dragon, but yes, I have amazing staff members that are just like, we've got this. So, the enemy that I always meet is me. And I have to remember that I have the support that I do. So,
yeah.
And I'm just terrible at it. I'm going to be honest. I suck at it. It is not something I've yet learned to do well. Again, I've got some great support systems in place who will yell at me if I'm checking my email and I'm not supposed to be. I'm supposed to be off. I know you're not checking your email, get random text. that will make me feel guilty. But my husband actually has I finally figured out his trick. I'll be relaxing on a Saturday, like Jeannie said, and feeling like I've got to get up and do something. There's so much to do. I've got to do X, Y, and Z. And he'll say, why don't we sit down and watch Netflix? Our daughter's out at dance. Let's sit down and watch Netflix. And we'll sit down and he'll get me into a show and I will completely zone out. I won't check my phone. I'm not thinking that I'm not being productive. We're sitting and we're enjoying some time together. And that's his trick to sort of help me have a little more balance, because he knows otherwise there is none.
You won't put yourself in that balanced area.
I will not. No.
Yeah. So Katie's coming back on. She's going to kick us to the floor.
I know, I'm
Here
back.
we are.
Oh my goodness, this is such awesome. Thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing your experiences and your tips. I know we have lots of questions still in the chat. So we will put those out on our Facebook page, so maybe everyone can kind of help contribute to that. But I do think it's really valuable for us to take a moment to get back to the floor so that you can share your experiences with each other. Our panelists will be on the floor too if you want to connect personally with them. Maybe you have a question you want to ask them specifically. But I want to give you that opportunity. So again, oh my gosh, Chris, Jeannie, Alexis, Sarah, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. And I'm going to send us back to the floor right now until about 12:55. We don't have a lot of time, and then we'll pop back on just to close everything up. But let you know that our floor will be open until 1:30 if you're in the middle of a conversation and you want to stick around. So thank you. I'm going to send you back to the floor.